Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Pavitra, and we'll be discussing history taking in acyanotic congenital heart disease child. This was requested by many students, but I was very hesitant to go about it because without having a patient at hand, without having somebody presented, it's difficult to discuss, offhand what and all should be asked. So rather, what I was thinking, I will discuss about the important aspects of when you will consider a congenital heart disease and why do those things happen in a congenital heart disease. So let's see how this works out. This is my first attempt at doing, completely without a patient like this. So hopefully it helps you guys. All right. So when are you going to suspect a child as having congenital heart disease? A young child who's coming to you, 3, 4 months, 6, 8, 10 months, to the infancy, somebody is coming to you. So if somebody asks you like this, or when you see a child, these things should run in your mind. This is not just for exams, right? If you're going to see a child, you should be able to assess the child. That's the whole point of you asking for history and examination. It's not just for pleasing the examiners or answering the expected answers. All right. So you have a child who's coming to you. When you see a child coming with recurrent respiratory tract infections, or a child who's say having a failure to thrive. So these are all broad things that can happen in a underlying respiratory problem, underlying cardiac problem, underlying say immunodeficiency disorder. There are many differentials for a child who's presenting with recurrent respiratory tract infection or a failure to thrive. That there are certain things that can give you clues as to this could be a congenital heart disease. For example, a child, infant who's coming with suck rest suck cycle. So what is suck rest suck cycle? This child who's breastfeeding, see, note this point is important. Breastfeeding, because breastfeeding is an active process where the child has to exert so much. It's like the equivalent of your exercise test that you do in older kids and adults. All right. So in breastfeeding, the child sucks for some times, but becomes tired, goes to rest, but since the tummy is not full, becomes hungry again, wakes up and sucks again. So this is your suck, rest, suck cycle which happens. So what does this tell? Basically, the heart is unable to keep up with the increased demand that is required by your active breastfeeding. So that is your suck, rest, suck cycle. All right. Then, so this can give you a clue. What else? Suppose mother says, child is comfortable when I'm putting the child on my shoulders, but not comfortable when the child is lying down on bed. So what does that mean? So this can be considered as an orthopnea equivalent. Orthopnea equivalent you would have done in your MBBS period, no? Older kids will be able to tell. Younger infants, they will not be able to tell, but they will be uncomfortable while lying down, but they'll be more comfortable on somebody's shoulders because it's like an upright position. Correct? So somebody has to tell me orthopnea mechanism. I'll be discussing this in next class. But for this class, this will be your homework. Go back and read the mechanisms of orthopnea and paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. So this one. So then what else the child with rather than saying acyanotic, I'll say left to right shunt. A child with left to right shunt can come with. They can come with fast breathing, retractions. So why do those happen? Fast breathing and retractions happen because the lungs are fluid filled. The interstitium is filled with fluid. Why is there fluid filling? Now, if you see a left to right shunt, what happens? So there is basically a shunting of blood from your left side of the heart to right side of the heart. Correct? So all this goes into your pulmonary circulation. So per se, there is increased pulmonary blood flow that is happening, right? So all this comes into your left side. So from right ventricle, pulmonary artery, your pulmonary capillaries, veins, coming back into your left atrium and left ventricle. So what happens here? Your left atrial pressure goes up, isn't it so? When left atrium goes up, back pressure, your pulmonary venous pressure goes up. When pulmonary venous pressure goes up, pulmonary capillary pressures. you get the idea, right? So everything is connected together. So in that state, what happens when the inside pressure, hydrostatic pressure increases, the fluid goes into the interstitium. The extra fluid that is going into the interstitium is going to make the lungs more stiff. It is difficult for the baby to fill the lung up with air. The alveoli do not have place to, expand when the child is taking a deep breath. So that's why the child has a faster breathing response, and retraction is to make sure the lungs expand well. All right. So you have your reason for tachypnea. You have your reason for your retractions. What else can the child come with? Recurrent respiratory tract infection. What's the mechanism of recurrent respiratory tract infection in a child with left to right shunt with, or say, increased pulmonary blood flow? Lesions with increased pulmonary blood flow. So increased pulmonary blood flow part you understood, correct? What happens? Your pulmonary vessels are big. So when those pulmonary vessels are big, it is going to block the airway. Okay, your bronchial vessels. Bronchial vessels, I'm sorry. Your airways, small airways. So when those small airways are blocked, what happens? The lung underneath is going to collapse. Correct? So atelectasis, micro atelectasis happens. So this term is very, very important. Micro atelectasis happens. And on top of that, your lymphatics are already full. It is trying to remove extra fluid from the interstitium that has come out of the vessels. So there also, once again, some fluid accumulation happens there in the microatelectatic area. So this forms a very good nidus for the organisms. On top of that, these kids can have mucociliary dysfunction. They will not be able to clear secretions that well. And on top of that, these kids, because of one, decreased nutritional intake per se. Two, their bodies require extra 20 to 30% calories. So normal calories itself is not met. Where will you go for extra 30% calories, 20% calories? Right? So basically they end up with nutritional deficiency also. So all of these things together can contribute to your recurrent respiratory tract infection. The main mechanism being microatelectasis, which is secondary to increased pulmonary blood flow, engorged pulmonary vessels, which is compressing on your small airways. All right. So they can present to you with recurrent respiratory tract infection. And apart from Sacre-Suck cycle, one other thing that I wanted to tell in Sacre-Suck cycle is you may not have a history if the child is being bottle fed, because bottle feeding is more passive. They don't have to put as much effort as breastfeeding. Okay, and along with Sacre-Suck cycle, a common history that you can get is that of forehead sweating. So why do they have this forehead sweating? Increases sympathomimetic action. Why? We are also having sympathomimetic activity. Why will a child with congenital heart disease have this, forehead sweating? And when you're asking for forehead sweating, make sure that it is, a later onset forehead sweating, and it's not because of mother over covering the child or, covering the child with a sari or a pallu or something like that. So yes, forehead sweating. See what happens, no? Normally, say suppose my cardiac output goes down for some reason, or I'm volume depleted for some reason. There's no internal mechanism in heart per se to adjust, isn't it? So you have your baroreceptors, you have your peripheral feedback loop mechanisms that help you to adjust for the volume that is circulating. So at tissue level, what happens? When your cardiac output goes down, your tissue circulation goes down, so local metabolites increase. So these give out a signal saying, boss, you have to pump more blood. My metabolite levels are more. So blood circulation increases, the feedback loop is complete. So in baroreceptor mechanism, what happens? Similarly, just a second, I'm getting a call. So where were we? We were discussing about mechanism, sympathetic mechanism. So when your cardiac output is down, your sympathetic activity shoots up. Make sure your heart rate is up, your contractility is up, make sure your vascular tone is better in order to keep the circulation going well. So this is what happens normally, and this should be enough to bring everything back to normal. But that does not happen in a congenital heart disease child, because per se the heart is flawed. right? So this is just increasing the preload reserve alone will not be enough for the child to compensate for the decrease in cardiac output that's going to come out. All right. So they persistently have this increased sympathetic activity. Hence, any demand on top of what is demanded by your congenital heart disease will cause excessive sweating and other sympathetic phenomena like your increased tachycardia, increased palpitations, all those. Right. So what have we discussed? We have discussed retractions. We have discussed fast breathing. Fast breathing, you can also include the role of J receptors. J receptors will be stimulated whenever interstitium is filled with fluid. That causes your respiratory rate to go up. So tachypnea, retractions, we have discussed Sakras-Suk cycle, your forehead sweating, recurrent respiratory tract infection, failure to thrive, again increased caloric demand, per se nutritional deficiency, recurrent respiratory tract infection, which can again dip your nutritional status. All of these together can contribute to your, what do I tell, failure to thrive. What else is left out in your history of presenting illness? I think these are the things that you will generally ask for in an infant who's coming to you, whom you suspect to have congenital heart disease, acyanotic congenital heart disease. All right. So maybe I think I should just take a class on approach to congenital heart disease. That might make this easier. Let's see, if I have time, I will do that. So tachypnea, feeding difficulty, sweating, yes. So all those we covered. So this is when you will suspect a child as having congenital heart disease. So now in your history of presenting illness, you to some extent know that this child is acyanotic because there was no history of bluish discoloration. You know it is a increased pulmonary blood flow condition because of recurrent respiratory tract infection, tachypnea and all that. Left to right shunt, again acyanotic, yes. And depending upon the time of onset, to some extent you might be able to gauge whether it is a PDA or a VSD. All right. So if the child presents in the newborn period, very young, 1 week, 3 days to 7 days, say, you should think more in terms of PDA, because when the pulmonary vascular resistance falls, your left to right shunt via PDA increases. If a child was okay for say 1 month, 1.5 months, then starts having symptoms of fast breathing, your Sakras-Suk cycle, your retractions, respiratory tract infection started from that age, then you can think in terms of VSD, because for VSD to have a significant left to right shunt, it's not just enough for your pulmonary vascular resistance to fall. Your right ventricular hypertrophy also has to reduce. Your right ventricular pressures also should fall. So for that to happen, it takes 4 to 6 weeks. So that's when you generally start to see symptoms or symptomatology in your ventricular septal defect patients. Age of onset, length, you have an idea, you know it is acyanotic or cyanotic, you know whether it is increased pulmonary blood flow or decreased pulmonary blood flow. So with this, you have an idea. So are there any other clues that you can get from subsequent histories? We will see it in next class. All right. Okay, bye-bye. Hopefully this was useful to you. If you have any ideas as to how to improve discussion of clinical history, let me know. I'm open for your critique and comments, because honestly this was very difficult for me to formulate and try to give it to you guys, and I am not sure whether you got to benefit from this. So let me know. This will be my setup for maybe next few class, next many classes. This is our PICU duty room. Lights only this much you will get, you will not have more brightness, and I'm still trying to balance PICU work, my homework, then academic activities, etc. things. So if I am a little bit this way, that way in classes, I apologize now itself. All right. Okay. Bye-bye.